Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday evening Redox Masterclass. It is always a pleasure to be here on Tuesday evenings talking about a truly revolutionary way to approach health and vitality. Most of us have grown up dealing with our health challenges by looking at and trying to work with the symptoms, right? Which can be very effective, but it rarely addresses the root of the problem. And redox is changing all of that. In fact, it's changing the entire paradigm of wellness and vitality. If redox is a new term for you, you are in wonderful company. It was for all of us. Just know that redox is the energy that powers all life. Nothing happens in my body, your bodies, even your pet's bodies without a redox reaction. They are truly the language of the cells. They're how the cells communicate. It's one of the most incredible and the largest communication system in the world. And their role is to not only protect your healthy cells, but help your body detect, repair, and replace any damaged cells anywhere in your body. It's quite remarkable. So tonight's masterclass is going to go over not just what is redox, but why it's so profound and why it might be of interest to you. People come and look at this and try to get educated on it for a number of reasons, and you might find yourself in several of these reasons. One of the biggest reasons people look at it is because they have a health challenge, right? Or maybe it's somebody they care about, somebody in their life that has a health challenge, and they're trying to explore this to see if redox could be the missing link on their journey back to wellness. Some people come and learn about this because they like to be proactive with their health. I think most of us, especially if we've been on the planet a few decades, have realized that it is much easier to maintain your health than it is to regain it once you've lost it. And so people often come and look at this from that proactive stance. Some of you are here because maybe you're athletic. Maybe you love to go play pickleball or basketball, or you like to hike or bike, and you've heard there's some type of athletic benefit to redox. And while we do have Olympic athletes, professional athletes using this, all of us could use faster recovery, more endurance, better mental focus. And so you don't have to be an athlete to get the benefits of what redox offers us. Some people look at this for the anti-aging benefits. We all know that every day we're 24 hours older than we were the day before. But what if there was a way to literally turn back the clock? Not just on the outward physical signs of aging that we see when we look in the mirror, but even on the inside. Dr. Hoffman often reminds us that the wrinkles that we see on the outside are simply a reflection of the wrinkles and the oxidative stress that are happening on the inside to our organs and our cells. Well, what if we could interrupt that breakdown of aging? And we're going to talk a little bit about how redox plays in that role as well. And then another reason that people look at this, and we don't go into this very much on a Tuesday night, but is when you have a breakthrough of this magnitude that literally impacts every human on the planet and all their pets, there's an opportunity. There is an opportunity to make an impact in the world beyond the impact you've already made in your lifetime. And if that's something that resonates with you, if you love being of service to people and helping others, and want to link arms with like-minded individuals, we'll talk a tiny bit about the company tonight, but we really dive into that more on Saturdays on this same Zoom, same password, 11 o'clock East Coast time. Dr. Hoffman's colleague, Dr. David Silverman, he is going to go over best usage of the products. And then at the bottom of the hour, they kind of switch gears, and he and Danielle Matthews will talk about what it does look like to help educate and help bring this to the world. So again, tonight, it's my hope that you just get a sense of how profound this technology is and why your friend invited you to come learn about it. This is often called Ask the Doc as well, because at the end of Dr. Hoffman's presentation, she will answer any questions. Just put your questions in the chat as she's going through. One thing, though, to note, this company made a conscious decision, as we'll talk a little bit about during the presentation, to not go down a drug path. And as such, we kind of fall under the supplement category within the FDA. As a supplement, we cannot make any claims that this cures, heals, prevents any disease or condition name. We're also not allowed to address disease names and condition names. So when you're putting your questions in the chat, in order for us to remain compliant, phrase your question maybe with symptoms that you're experiencing or functions that have been impacted, as opposed to putting in a disease name, because we cannot address a disease name. We're not trying to avoid your questions. We must stay compliant because we want this technology to be around for all of us for decades to come. So with that, I'd love to introduce you to Dr. Carolyn Hoffman. She is a board certified traditional naturopath. She's been working in the field of natural medicine for over 25 years. And she's been working with this technology for 9 years. What I love about Dr. Hoffman, one of many things, is she is one of the most eloquent speakers on Redox. She's got beautiful analogies that allow us to really understand the complexities of redox and how it's working in the body. She's got decades of practical experience as a naturopath, but she also is on the medical board for this company. It's a volunteer position, but it's given her the opportunity over the last many years to kind of pull the curtain back and understand not just the science of redox a little deeper, but really understanding these products that evolved out of literally decades of research. And so with that, Caroline, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. We always appreciate your start. It's such a comprehensive ground rules, really, on what we're about this evening. And my particular goal is always that I hope that by the time you finished this presentation, that you walk away feeling as I came to feel eventually, once I truly understood more about this, is that this is foundational for every single human being on the planet. Hopefully, when you're younger, you're certainly going to need it, and we'll kind of explain why. But post 25, this is beginning to play an important piece in being able to look at how do I set up my future for being its most optimal if I want to maintain my health. And if I'm further down the line, as many of us on this call often are, how can I do a lot to really kind of put a stake in the process of this aging that goes on in the body and all of the things that fall apart as a result of it? We all want to get older, but none of us want to feel older, I'm sure. So, optimal health is really where it's all about. I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can look at, let me get the right one for you. Here we go. And we can look and together. Let's put it on large screen mode and we'll be able to see more clearly. And as Lynn said, this is our master class, and we're talking about the key to health and longevity. And we're going to discuss it from a different process and a different perspective, perhaps, than what you might be used to. Many of us are really brought up with or much more focused on individual supplements targeting symptoms. And we want to sweep that away. We're really looking at the broad landscape of cellular communication, which means nothing in the human body is left out. Every single cell is involved in this process. How that supports and protects us as we get older, how it helps make sure that we can repair, and as I said, really making sure that we can age strong rather than have challenges as we get older. I want to start by thinking more about our body. Have anybody here maybe put a one in the chat for me if you've been to any kind of a concert and heard some amazing concert with a fabulous symphony orchestra and maybe a well-renowned conductor. And you know, it is incredible, right? It is just perfection because it is harmony at its very best. And I want us to think that that really represents what health is like in the human body. Right? Everything is working in sync, signals are clear, timing is perfect, peak performance occurs. And what happens as time changes for us, and we're going to talk about where redox plays a part in that and why it happens. Well, when we have this slow and incomplete redox communication, it's really like saying, you know, we haven't got everybody present in that symphony orchestra. There's lots of spaces where people should be, and there's nobody playing their part anymore. Maybe people are playing off key, maybe they're playing out of sync in timing, and there's no conductor saying, you know what, guys, this is a mess. You know, we're not ending up with what we're aiming for. We need to pull this together and get all in sync and get everybody working in harmony. That's really what dis-ease looks like in the human body. And dis-ease is not about, well, is it just a heart problem or a lung problem? It's about the fact that there's some cells that really are dysregulated in that organ system, and it's not everybody's present and not everybody's communicating in the way that we should be. So we want to think about health in a very different way. And health, I also want to talk about the fact that so many people will ask whether it's this or even something else, well, do I need to take this forever? Well, no, absolutely not. You don't. I could say, well, do you need to eat every day? No, maybe you don't always need to eat. Maybe you want to do some cleansing. Maybe you want to do some fasting. That's all good. Do we want to maintain good muscle strength? Well, yeah, we need to exercise on a regular basis. So I want you to think of the fact that we don't exercise for a week or a month and we're done. Right. Those muscles and being in peak performance as an athlete is also not just a destination with a timeline and that's it, we're finished, we can sit down. Our health is the same thing. It's just not a final fixed destination. It's a daily process. And probably because, like that boat, every single one of us today on this call is challenged more than any of our ancestors were ever challenged, right? We can be doing everything that we know to bail out that boat of all the things that are affecting us, but we're also getting holes in that boat as we get older. We're being impacted by so much more stuff that drills holes in that boat. And so stuff is coming in as fast as it's going out. So we really got to think of this as a daily and level of focus if we want to maintain and combat the challenges of just being human beings nowadays. It's kind of astonishing that within 15 minutes, we're actually absorbing as many toxins as our ancestors, and I can count myself as one of those ancestors. 50 years ago, we would consume that in a year. We'd be impacted by those toxins in a year, and now it's 15 minutes, which might give you a sense of why there's no such thing as, well, I can do a cleanse for a month and I'm good to go for the next year. That doesn't work any longer. So, what are we talking about? Well, the intelligence behind the human body, the 70 to 100 trillion cells, is not a random process. It's guided through genetics and is coordinated through this process of cellular signaling messengers, which are these things called redox signaling molecules. So every cell is just making up tissues which form organs, which form systems. And I think of those as like the sections of the orchestra, right? If those systems are beautifully in place, then everything is going to come along in the way we want it to be. Now, your cells, as we're on this call this evening, are actually producing 50 million molecules of energy, ATP, which is a good thing because all our cells need energy. Otherwise, we couldn't be doing anything. But that Krebs cycle doesn't just make the fuel. It actually creates these redox signaling molecules. These are the messengers, these positive and negative charges that are literally telling the energy where is it needed, right? Which organ system, which section of that orchestra is out of sync and needs some reorganization and some repair. It tells it where to go. It tells it when to stop. It tells us what we need to build in cells. It tells us what do we need to repair. In other words, this is beautiful communication. Now, those oxidants and reductants, these are the positive and negative charges that come from that Krebs cycle, are the function of redox. Oxidants detect the problems. Reductants direct the solution. And so you have this beautiful synergy between the two sides when it's in balance. And health is basically rapid communication because it's detecting stress, it's repairing damage, it's removing worn out cells, and it's basically restoring balance at all times. So, disease becomes the process where communication begins to break down between these two sides of the communication language. Now, symptoms are not the beginning, right? They are an announcement. They're an announcement, unfortunately, that below the surface, stress has actually been accumulating for years. And so when your cellular communication can no longer communicate and coordinate repair and keep you resilient and make sure that you recover, that is what happens when the iceberg breaks above the surface and now it's got a name to us. So we need to think about the fact that health isn't just having nothing on the surface either. A lot of people will say, well, I'm good. I've got nothing wrong with me. I don't have X, Y, and Z. And they count health as being a lack of disease or a lack of a symptom. And it really isn't. It's about what's happening under the surface that you may not know until it's way too late. Now, your DNA doesn't change and your cells don't disappear. So, what changes? Why do we go from this 5-bar resilience to this very unhelpful 4 bar, 2 bars, 1 bar. Well, small changes take place, but they have big consequences because we begin to lose this redox production at approximately 1% of our manufacturing production, literally communication every year from puberty. I was just talking to somebody on the phone today who's a nurse, and she said, "Good grief, I never realized it started that early." And I said, "Yeah, I don't think there's a teenager on the planet who probably announces in puberty, 'Oh, I'm now aging,' right? Because they're losing their redox. But that's where it happens. And we move from this high energy, highly resilient human being to much slower level of recovery and obviously more chronic health issues the older we get. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's literally happening every single day we're alive. By the time we're at 25, it is a measurable loss. Now, until 2009, there wasn't an awful lot that we could do about this inbuilt loss, unless you wanted to run a marathon every single day. That would be a great thing. You can certainly rebuild your redox, but not all of us have got the time, inclination, or desire to do that. So let's talk about the change that came about that enabled us to be in the driving seat of our own health and actually impact this natural inbuilt loss of redox that's going to go on from puberty. And after 10 years of publicly traded research, Verdis Norton, who you can see on the screen, was actually helping to bring forward a scientific breakthrough that was once thought unattainable. Many of those universities there that validated this breakthrough actually said, no, it's impossible. When he said what they'd done, no, can't do that. Scientifically, you cannot stabilize outside the human body these really highly active bioidentical signaling messengers. But in 2007, as a result of his diligence and bringing together a whole group of scientists who took the original 10 years of publicly traded research and dug into it to help this transition take place, bioavailable, non toxic solution designed to support our cellular communication at a level that traditional nutrients, if you're doing traditional supplements, cannot do, took place. In other words, we have in these beautiful blue bottles that you may or may not have seen, we actually have stabilized bioactive redox signaling molecules. And those are suspended energetic molecules that want to go to work, and they go to work on us the moment we put them in us. That is the kind of catalyst that's the spark that releases all of this beautiful energy. And so this is an amazing breakthrough that, as I said, the science community said could never take place. It's really kind of interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about a decision that he had to make when he managed to get this across the finish line, so to speak, and actually stabilize it, going from 10 minutes of lifespan to 12 months of lifespan. Now you can actually start to do something when something hangs around a little longer. And inside the body, the cells that generate these redox signaling molecules are from the simple elements that make up the human body, which is salt and water, saline. If you think about going to a hospital, that's the thing that they're going to give you if you are dehydrated or if you've been in some kind of trauma event or you're in an operation, because that's what fills our cells. And the breakthrough was learning how to create a stabilized version outside the body, as I mentioned. And we have to try to replicate. This was the challenge. How do you replicate what the mitochondria does in a nanosecond? And yet, when we did this breakthrough back in 2007, it would take us 3.5 days to match what the human body could do, which is really quite astonishing. Our science has progressed so much now that we can actually make exactly the same molecules in 16 hours, which is really kind of incredible too. But using an electrochemical process, the saline is transformed into these redox signaling molecules. They're designed to mirror the chemistry of your body, and that relies upon this communication. And so, what we're doing here on the left in step one is we take the pristine saline, exactly the same as inside us. We put it through various processes to do with pH, salinity, temperature, voltage, and amperage, and we're replicating what that Krebs cycle is doing. We break down the atoms of the saline. That's four components. You can see them here at the bottom of the screen: sodium, chloride, hydrogen, and oxygen. I think of this as the body's version of Scrabble. It has four tiles given to it, and the challenge is how many redox signaling molecules can you make with those four tiles? And that's what the body's doing. It restructures them into redox signaling molecules. We do exactly the same thing. And what's in that bottle is suspended redox waiting to go to work. Here is where that magic happens. This is the FDA registered facility in Salt Lake. We are the only company in the world who's done this. So, this is where the world's supply of bioactive redox signaling is made. We're FDA registered, NSF and GMP compliant, and every single person on the planet who's currently drinking this product gets it from here. It comes from this facility direct to the door of every client and customer using it in 35 countries. So we serve a lot, hundreds of thousands of people worldwide who are benefiting from this product. So we want that to be shipped directly to you because that way we know it's verifiable. We know it's a real product. It's not fake. It's not expired. It's not tampered with. And we also guarantee our 30-day money back guarantee. So this is where that magic happens. And if you're kind of curious about the staging and some of the tanks that you're seeing in there, and you really love to actually see this up personally and in front of them, you can actually do a tour of our FDA facility. You can either go and book a tour. They'll take you around with the scientists and talk about what's going on. Or you could actually attend our conference in August, where members going to the conference are also going to have trips around here. Or maybe you might like to reach out to the person that invited you and see when we have a private fly-in, which is a very special day in which you meet all of the corporate owners and you get to really look behind the scenes in so many other different ways. Now, redox, as Lynn said, is not new. It's been studied for decades. As it's literally the critical force behind every single function in our body, which is why it's such an important field of health science. And we have 6 Nobel Prizes and millions of published studies showing the impact of our redox system when it's out of balance. Now, we'll say that everybody's trying to make a drug out of it, and they haven't managed to do that because these little molecules are tricky. They don't want to hang around. But it leads the field of health science, and researchers are trying to find out how to control these. We have annual conferences in Paris since 2009. So if you're here today and you say, well, I've never heard of this, well, you're just a bit behind the curve. And that's okay because you know what? We can't keep up with the science nowadays. It's moving so fast, and probably your doctor hasn't even heard or maybe knows very little about redox. If they were trained pre 2008, they're probably not going to have had any training in redox as a biological science. If they are 2008 post, then you'll find that some of them will say, oh, yeah, I know what redox is. They know what the biology of redox is, but they wouldn't know that the breakthrough of stabilization has taken place. So they're unfortunately not a great reference for you as to, I've come across this technology. Can you tell me about it? Probably most of them are not going to know much at all, but there's some sites for you to go learn more about this. James Watson has highlighted the imbalance, redox imbalance, as being a central factor to diseases such as diabetes and cancer and cardiovascular disease. He's even raised a bigger question about how many conditions that we end up experiencing actually start with a breakdown in this cellular communication. And I would certainly say that I would agree with that. Public recognition has been reported. Our company has been talked about back in 2016 as one of 5 scientific breakthroughs that are going to shape our future. And recent scientific published studies that we have on our, you'll see a lot more discussion now about redox as a whole. So a lot of movement in that scientific field. So for the last 15 years, ASEA has made products that literally contain exactly the same redox signaling molecules as your body is making currently. And that's a good thing because when we stop making them, we're dead in 3 seconds. That's how important they are. This is the first and only cell signaling supplement. We literally have defined this entirely new category. I think Lynn kind of mentioned, that people don't know what to do with this. Over here, we're in the FDA category of nutrition. We're classified differently around the world. In Europe, they think of us as a food. In Asia, they consider us a water. So it kind of shows you, we're a little bit of a square peg in a round hole, and they fit us in differently wherever we market. But we don't fit into this traditional category. And so that's part of the challenge of why people don't truly understand what this breakthrough is unless they come to something like this to learn about it. We're manufactured to the highest standards, equal to drug manufacturing, independent third party testing to validate and verify bioactive stabilized redox signaling molecules. So if you've gone and done a Google search as opposed to Google Scholar, and you've done a Google search and someone goes, oh, that's a saltwater scam. I kind of remember, Lynn, your daughter told you that, right? When you first introduced it to her. They have no clue about the science. They really haven't done any research into it. Plus, if you look here on the right, you can see on every bottle, this is our third party independent laboratory testing. Every fourth batch goes out to these laboratories, it's tested and it's verified so that as consumers, you and I know that we're not buying salt water, we're buying this incredibly complex, brilliant breakthrough of science of stabilized redox signaling molecules. We also meet WADA and all sports requirements, and we'll talk about the athletes who use that and why we do that. So, how are you going to know what it does, right? Because the beauty about this, and maybe the tricky part, is that this is not going to diagnose, treat, or cure anything. Our body is what's designed to heal. Our body already knows how to do that, but because we lose this communication, this is the software language of the cells, right? And if they can't talk, then they can't also help us heal because they know how to do that. But if the message doesn't get through, it's not going to occur. So your body is going to have its own priority list. And inside, it could be that your priority is digestion. It might be eyes. It may be blood sugar. And maybe you're focusing on the very poor sleep, and that's what you want it to do. We want you to benchmark everything about your health on day one, today, before you start using this product, so that you know where you start from, what's your baseline. And then we want you to drink 2 ounces in the morning and 2 ounces in the evening. That's one of these cups, morning and evening. And at the end of 1 week, we want you to benchmark all those things again. Now, you may have focused on your sleep, that's your priority, but maybe your blood sugar has started to shift. Right? Maybe that's where your body says that's your priority, not your sleep, no matter how bad you feel it is. Right? And so the body will prioritize for you what is most important. At the end of that first week, 10 to 15% of people will have seen something significant change. That leaves most of us saying, well, okay, what's it doing? Where's it going? What's the body doing with it? That's why we want you, if you are not in that category, to double up, do 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening. Stay there until you get your dramatic breakthrough. It's going to vary from 1 month to 2 months. And we know that by the third month, 90% of people are in a really good place with this product. But our recent study that came out about a couple of months ago has shown us that by the end of month 4, measurable, what we call cytokine markers, inflammatory markers in the blood, have shown an 89% reduction at 120 days. So we want you to know that even if you haven't seen everything you want to see by day 90, keep on going through because there's more ahead. And that's the beauty of what this is. And it's never going to stop working for you. It's just going to find the next thing on the list. A bit like the renovation list. If you go through your house and you've got a bunch of things you want to renovate, what's the number one? What's the least important? The body's going to work its way through that list, that health inventory in the same way. When we help every cell, we're going to see all sorts of different outcomes as a result of it, really. What I said, like the orchestra, if someone's got a breathing issue, that breathing section of the orchestra, the lungs, are not working too well. They've got some damaged cells in there. And so some people might experience better breathing. Some people may experience better autoimmune responses in their body and get rid of all the challenges that come with that. For some people, it might be skin. For some people, like that client in the screen there, who was having chunks of her hair fall out, and her hairstylist could see that so clearly, and they talked about what to do, and she wanted to get off hormone medication, and her doctors wouldn't help her. Maybe that can be your outcome. Perhaps it's mobility and energy from an injury and not being able to enjoy your life in retirement. It doesn't matter because the uniforming theory and the uniform, rather, um, system here is really that we're looking at supporting any cell anywhere in the body that's really not communicating the way it should. And so the body has the potential to make any change possible. Our redox signaling molecules, I want to show you here in this, how is it recharging your cells literally at any age? And so it's never too late to start this. This is Rosie. This is our real life Rosie that we love to show because it is such a beautiful example of how at 84 she had all those wrinkles on the inside, lots of oxidative stress on the inside, very clear on the outside. No energy in those eyes, right? The ATP was really drilling down and there wasn't much there to go around. Her life was kind of on the wane, right? Like that, the candle that's beginning to fade, and probably not a good outcome fairly soon. But at 7 weeks into this, this is her, a very different image and showing that there's a lot more energy, that there's repair going on. A lot of things that weren't happening before have started up. We will say to you, take photos. She had her son did take a photo of her, and she at 7 weeks didn't think it had done anything until she saw that photo. And as a result, thank goodness she stayed on the product, and you can see her here at 87 and here at 91. I often start this by saying this to me has become the single most influential product technology that I've ever used. And here is the reason why. When I look at this, I would say that I defy anyone to show me someone who looks like she does at 84, can make her live another 7 years, and yet anti age her at least 10 years earlier than where we started. And that is because we're going to the root of how every cell communicates to detect damage and make sure that the body does the repair that it knows how to do. Is a broad spectrum, as we talked about. People were spraying this liquid on them and getting them lots of benefits. Why were they spraying it? Well, because these are tricky molecules, and it took 5 years to find something that we could put that liquid in, and we could actually put it into a gel that you could apply to the skin. You'll see it's totally clear, instead of spraying it. Then what we see is those renewed 28 studies. What does that mean? That in 28 days, we have an anti-aging impact by speeding up skin cell turnover by 16% in 28 days. That is directly anti-aging. But we also see other changes between 20 and 23% changes in things like skin texture and elasticity and wrinkles and just all that redness and clarity that can calm down from there. So this is an all over body therapy, not just the face. Obviously, we think about it for the face, but use it wherever you've got skin, which is pretty big. Broad spectrum as a drink. We said, if this plays every note in the piano of the human body, so to speak, what is it? Does this impact any kind of inflammation? Because those notes do touch it. But we're kind of looking also genetically. Does it do anything genetically? This study showed us that taking healthy 35-year-olds who, interestingly, when they studied their genetic expression, found that at 35, even though they may not have noticed anything change in their health, it was already down-regulating, already less efficient than it was in their 20s. They put them on 8 ounces of the ASEA for 8 weeks, and at the end of the 8 weeks, 100% of people in that group had a 20 to 31% sustained and beneficial improvement in 5 genetic pathways. 100%. My nurse on the call today was blown away by that. She said, that is just outstanding. And I said, yeah, and the fact is, whether you've got a health history that you're trying to overcome, or whether you're just thinking smartly that, investing now when I'm young is going to be a lot cheaper than trying to solve the problems when I'm older. Or maybe I think I'm fairly healthy and I just want to try and stay that way, right? It's going to support all of us. That placebo was the saline that we use. So if you've ever read those studies or those places that tell you this is a saline scam, all right, it's interesting that the genetic pathways didn't recognize that as being a scam and beneficial. So what we see is that we changed immune health. We changed cardiovascular health with supporting arterial elasticity. That's important. You don't want veins popping. You want them to be elastic if something's going wrong. Improving gut health and digestive enzyme production. If you don't have a good gut, you don't have a good brain. They go together. They are just inseparable. The gut is, the center of where everything starts to go wrong. Modulating hormone balance and vitality and wellness, supporting the body's ability to respond to stresses. Those external stresses could be your boss, they could be your job, they could be your husband or your wife, your family, right? They could be the toxins that you're breathing in, the food that you eat, the water that you drink. Any of those things are stresses to the system. A healthy system needs to be able to flex like a really bouncy boxer. It needs to be able to dodge that hit, right? And get back upright all the time. And that's what we need to be healthy. And maintaining a healthy inflammatory response. It might say the technical bit about physical exercise, that's being alive, right? It's not about running a marathon. So those are really important foundational things that are going to ensure that if 100% of those people on that call, on that test, could get a benefit, why would we not want to use it? And when I said I hope it becomes common sense, I think to me this is maybe the most important screen that you could look at. Now, each of those genetic pathways is like opening a door because there are multiple other pathways that cascade all over the body from each of those genetic pathways that affect millions of things in the body. They turn on and off switches through redox. I want you to look at number 4. And the things in blue are just to kind of give you a sense of if that pathway is off, what would that affect? And maybe if you can see some health challenges that relate to you, it's a sign that that signal is not working the way it should. But the fourth one is like having a sprinkler system in every human cell of the body. It is the sprinkler system that responds when we have inflammation. It turns on the signal, the NRF2, and it recruits the healing which comes through things like glutathione, our master antioxidant. So if we touch that inflammation through the liquid, we were curious, what else could we do? Could we kind of control and corral the benefits of that and say, can we just play on that inflammatory genetic pathway and impact inflammation? Because that's the root of so many problems in health as a whole, and uncontrolled is definitely a challenge. And after our university studies showed us that the redox increased that, the gold, we were able to partner with the University of Western Australia and Bath University in England to produce targeted communication. This is Redox Gold. It contains slightly different species of redox signals, but it is infused with molecular gold, and that helps it to target and just hit that inflammatory pathway. So by increasing things, we're able to actually get the body to respond very quickly to any challenges that you may be experiencing on a local level. Now, if you've got something that hurts you, this is the one you really want to play around with. Measure what level of discomfort you have from a 1 through 10. And also range of motion. Maybe stiff neck is your problem. Maybe it's not necessarily hurting. But on a 1 through 10, I want you to take the gel. Again, it's going to be totally clear. If you get it into the light in person, you're going to see flecks of 24 karat molecular gold. This one you need to actually rub in, massage it in, because that's part of what helps activate it. We want you to put that over the area of discomfort, start your clock, and about 3 minutes later, if you aren't down to a 0, we want you to apply it again to the same spot and also put it on either side of the neck and start the clock again. And maybe another 5 minutes later, if you're not yet at a 0, you may see changes as you're moving through this. We want you to apply at the same spots, but with the white gel, because this is kind of the puzzle piece sometimes that just locks together beautifully. Now, our goal in this process is that within 10 minutes, 9 out of 10 people are going to see pretty dramatic changes. Our goal is to try to get you to zero. It might not happen, but know that the more that you apply this, it's not just about immediate benefit, it's actually teaching the cells the recovery process. In other words, turning up this ability of the body to heal itself. And it's a pretty amazing thing. Some people feel that on one application, literally in seconds. Some people might need to do longer, but play around with that and have fun with it and try it on your friends as well. Our studies also showed us a whole bunch of things. Right? With the application of it, we increase our body's natural response to inflammation by 160%. That's a massive increase in being able to detect when there and where there is a problem. It also showed that our ability to protect those cells as a result of recruiting some healing went up as much as 280%. And when we did studies, measurable thermal response, we had a 100% response across hundreds of actual test studies. And here you can see that in 15 minutes with one application, there was this measurable change in thermal response. So, this is a beautiful and amazingly powerful way to use a targeted use of redox technology. Our athletes, as Lynn said, use this product. We do a lot of studies at human performance labs in North Carolina. And why do they use it? Because they get a 29% faster recovery and endurance. And then this nurse actually said the same thing to me. She said, well, let's just call that 30%. She said, this is just amazing to be able to speed up recovery that much. So for them, it means that they can practice a lot more frequently instead of having longer periods of downtime between practices. It improves cognition, it improves response time. All those things can apply to our lives. I don't know what you do with 29% faster recovery and more endurance, but I'm sure you've got somewhere you could apply it to your life. And how would that change things for you? Maybe significantly. If you're interested in more studies, this is an example of the fact that when you're first to market, no one else can tell you what you've got. No one else can explain why we see hundreds of thousands of people reporting all sorts of different responses. And we needed to know to begin to understand what is it we've created and why are they getting these benefits. And you can see here some of the studies that we've been running that have given us examples. Kind of, we have to reverse engineer. We see X and then we do the science and we go, oh, now we understand why that changed because here's the mechanism that goes with it. And we have other resources. If you're interested in other resources, we can do Real Redox Results is a private Facebook group where people will talk about their own experiences and post their stories. Real Redox Results, we play that at the beginning of our call each week. We have about 187 varied and comprehensive interviews that take place on Thursdays live, and then we bank them here. So if that interests you, you'll see all of those little blue buttons. You can click on the blue buttons. It will take you to the interviews that relate to those challenges. And so that would be a great place to go for you to learn, well, how would this help me, right? Click in if you've got general discomfort or maybe health professional, maybe you've got immune challenges or skin irritations. Click on that and you can listen to the stories that go there. And our last part is what we often, Lynn and I often think of as just as important as the product, right? The ethos. Why is our mission to better the lives of others and to be a force for good in the world? And if this is something that kind of catches your interest, maybe you're motivated more by legacy and purpose and things like that, how could you help us further this mission with the people that you know? Because we do need to get this out because people need to be able to put themselves in charge of their own health. Lynn, I'm going to pass this over to you. Let me find my screen. I'm going to shoot over and make this your role. We're going to swap. I shall get rid of the stop share on there. And Lynn is going to take over this piece.
Thanks, Carolyn. We love to talk on Tuesday nights just a little bit about the ethos or the culture of the company and how it came about. You remember the screen with Vertus Norton. He was actually a Fortune 50 guy. He was the vice president of international national strategy for Kraft Foods. So when he came across this technology and had this team of scientists stabilize it, for him it was a business play. He was looking at how he could then sell this to what he thought was the best way to get it out to the world, which was to a pharmaceutical company. So he started to talk to different pharmaceutical companies, but at the same time, he also had a focus group of people, about 40 people, friends, family members, church members, all who had varying levels of health challenges. Six of those 40 had life-threatening challenges, been told to get their affairs in order. But he wanted, a group of people to be taking this to see what happened, right? And how it was going to be working. So they're off drinking as much as they wanted. They could come and get it whenever they wanted. And he entered into some discussions with one particular pharmaceutical company who was very interested. They sent their top scientists to look at the previous research and then all of his research. And they were very impressed. And they said, look, we want what you have. And they offered him a very, very large sum of money, legacy money. And as they were going through the contract, there was one caveat in there. And that caveat was that that whole focus group of people and Vertus Norton and his entire family basically had to come off the product that was not going to be available to them. And this kind of took him aback because he had been looking at this focus group, and after a couple months, he had found that those 40 people had turned into 120 people. They were having such great results. They were just giving it to friends and family. And those six people who had life-threatening challenges seemed to be thriving. And he said to this company, I can't ethically do that. Six of these people, their life really shifted because of this. And they said, look, if you want the money, you walk away. And as I mentioned, it was tens of millions of dollars. I don't know what any of us on this call would do, but he could not morally do that and take it away from the people. And he made a decision that changed everything. He walked away from the money and he founded this company that we all know and love, ASEA. And he decided when he did that he wanted this to be his legacy to humanity. He tried to figure out, what's the best way to get this product to market. He had come from Kraft Foods. He knew how to bring products to market. He also knew that he had a very unique technology. As Dr. Hoffman showed you, if you look at the bottle, it just says sodium chloride and water. So people think it's salt water. Even though it says Redox certified, most people don't know what Redox is yet. So he knew it couldn't be, a typical distribution of putting it on a store shelf, even a health food store. So he chose word of mouth or network marketing. And he wanted to make sure that he elevated that industry in that ASEA would always be very transparent. And he wanted to make sure that always people and purpose and principle would come before ego and economics. It's a privately held company, so they're not beholden to shareholders where the bottom line and profit rules everything, which I think is so refreshing in an age where corporate greed is so rampant. It's nice that there's a company that really cares about bringing this to the world. He wanted a company that really encourages cultivating relationships, not just making a transaction with someone. A company that believes that we're all here to be of service to others, and that should be paramount rather than just selling someone something. And so that's how the ethos was born 12 years ago, 15 years ago. And it has run deeply through both the corporate side all these years later, as well as those of us who have decided to link arms and become part of this mission with this company. The products are life-changing. I mean, there's no debate about that. The science is there, the experiences are there, but it's also the business can be life-changing. Making a difference in other people's lives just touches your heart in a way that other things don't. And so if this is something that, as Carolyn said, resonates with you, talk to the person that invited you. It's really a community of people that you really would love to surround yourself with. And so, as I said earlier, if you want to learn more about what that looks like, you can come on Saturday mornings with Dr. Silverman and Danielle Matthews, same Zoom, etc. But I just love that on Tuesday nights we get to at least touch a little bit about the culture and the people behind this company, whether you're looking at this for a health challenge or something more. I think it's important to know who stands behind it. and how committed they are to our health and the longevity of this technology being available. So, Caroline, I'm going to turn this back over to you. I didn't see too many questions, but they might have come, I know sometimes they come directly to you.